This is the Rat Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Over 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Odyssey, Telegram, and sometimes the Prepper Broadcast Network. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. Today is January 15th, 2023, and this is episode 237 of the Workshop Podcast. So how is everyone? That was the brand new intro for those of you who haven't heard. This is only the second night I played it. I hope you enjoy it. If you happen to know, if you can figure out all the quotes that are in that, I will give you a special prize. So let's leave it at that. Now, tonight, guys, I've got somebody that I've been wanting to get on the show for a while. I'm sure you've heard his name. If you've been to Self-Reliance Festival, I bet you've met him. But let me introduce Mr. Chuck Peoples. Hey, Chuck, how are you?
Good, Tim. How are you?
Not bad at all, sir. Not bad at all. So what have you been up to?
Just the same old, same old. I just got back last night. I went down to Jason Sparks' place, Kentucky Sustainable Living,
Nice.
and did a 2-day medical class training for his group there, for a group of his people. And we had a really good time. My son and I went down, and Jason, he's a heck of a host, man. He feeds you well. You gain a little bit of weight when you go down there. He puts on the food.
I certainly don't need to gain any more, but
yeah, me either.
He's a good dude. We chatted a bit. We've traded a little bit of silver in the mail, and one night I was rather under the weather, and I was just struggling with my voice. And he messaged me out of the blue. He says, "Hey, if you want me to come on and help shoot the shit with you and get you through," and that meant so much to me. You don't forget that kind of stuff. You know, it's just the little things, right? But yeah, he's a salt of the earth kind of guy.
Yeah, and he's got a heck of a place down there. His setup, his homestead and stuff, and the animal stuff he's got. He's a very well prepared individual. It was impressive to see his homestead and setup.
That's cool. I'm glad. So let's for those who don't know who Chuck Peoples might be, give us a little bit about your background, Chuck, where you came from. One of our favorite questions around here is, what was your first job in high school, junior high, high school, whatever it was to make money? I always love hearing that. So
I was, I can't remember if I was 14 or 15. One summer, my dad was an attorney, and he had a client who owned a roofing company and was looking for some help. And I went to work for a roofing company, and that's when I learned real quick that hard manual labor in the summer, carrying 100-pound roofing bundles up ladders. I thought, I want to make sure I do something that I'm not stuck being the low man on the totem pole, doing all the grunt work. That was an experience, but it was a good learning lesson. But that was a very, very hard summer.
Get any sunburns that summer?
Oh yeah. We were commercial roofs, and it was cleaning. And, I was a guy who had to clean out the gutters that haven't been cleaned out in 10, 15 years. So, on big buildings. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
They love the low man on the totem pole. He gets you know what they say, the shit rolls downhill, right? So
I had the shit jobs.
Literally
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
So, did you grow up in West Virginia?
I did. I grew up in Huntington, West Virginia. Grew up and have lived in this area most of my life. The last 8 years or so, I've traveled a lot with work, but I've always had a house or something here. It's where my family is. My son and his family. My mom's here. I've been in this area most of my life.
Nice. And you got a grandson or grandsons? 2
grandsons. One is 6 and the other one is 26 weeks.
Okay. Nice. They're fun. Yeah. Well, I don't have any yet, but I'm sure someday, but
they're all kinds of fun.
Speak of the devil and Jason shows up. Hello, brother Jason. How are you?
Yeah.
So you've got what what is the name of your business now that you run?
Appalachian Medical Solutions.
Okay.
I do training, medical classes of different type. I try to do mine a little different to where I like to cater and customize the classes to the group that wants me to come in. I do have some canned classes, certain subjects to go over and stuff, but I like to talk to the group. Like with Jason's group, we talked extensively before I came down, and I kind of catered and customized a class for them for kind of what they were looking for, because some of them had some of the other stuff. So I if you're going to pay money, I want to give you your best value and give you, the best experience as possible.
So how'd you get into the medical field?
Well, growing up, I watched Emergency as a kid.
Yeah.
Johnny and Roy. So that stuck with me. I always kind of wanted to be a firefighter, a cop, paramedic, that type of thing. Got in high school, kind of got into the music stuff too. I played sports and stuff, but I actually, after high school, I went to a recording arts school in Orlando, Florida, and got a degree in that. And I did recording engineering and live sound production. And I ventured off to Los Angeles for a couple of years and worked in the music industry, touring with bands around the country. And then I just decided that wasn't for me. And I came home and thought I was going to go into law enforcement, but I've just always been intrigued with medical stuff. So I took tests for some law enforcement agencies, some professional fire departments, and some EMS. And I decided I wanted to be a paramedic. And that's the I had a big choice because I tested good in all of them. And I was kind of started to being offered positions with all these different departments, fire and law enforcement, but I just decided to go with the EMS route. I really enjoyed that. So I've been a firefighter, paramedic don't really do the firefighting stuff anymore, but I've been in the EMS for 28 years.
Nice. And so you still work full-time EMS as well?
Yeah. I still do that. I'm a critical care paramedic, but I'm really trying to build up my side business as far as teaching and stuff, and I'm doing that, and I'm hopefully get to the point where that's going to be my full-time job.
So I always used to hear the joke about what do you call somebody that follows a band around? They say the sound guy, right? But how did you enjoy that for a while? I know probably.
It was a good experience. I met a lot of good people. Saw a lot of big name musicians, and saw a little bit of history. I watched the Eagles get back together, believe it or not. Don Henley and Glenn Fry actually make up. So where I was working part-time at a rehearsal studio out there when I wasn't on the road. And it was kind of interesting. I got to see a few cool things and experience some stuff. And it was a lot of fun.
That's cool, man. That was in was that the early mid 90s, was it? Or
that was early 90s. Yeah. 90, 91. Yeah.
That was a big deal when the Eagles got back together.
Yeah.
I'm always intrigued by how, I don't know, those bands, they get, they grow up together, they build together, they grow together. And then all of a sudden, whatever happens, things change and everybody, they follow to favor with one another, but I like seeing them get back together.
I worked for it's a pretty famous rehearsal studio out there. A lot of big name backs went there, and I got to see a lot of well-known musicians. And it's funny when you actually see them day to day when they're actually doing their job. And a lot of people, music business is just like anything else. It's a business. It's their job, and that's the way they treat their professionals. So you see them off the limelight, who they really are and what they are and the true businessmen they are.
Were they pretty good guys? Yeah,
for the most part. I mean, there's always an asshole in every group of everything, but for the most part, they were all, really nice people. They were good people to work with. I mean, it's not like I hung around with them and we were buddies or anything, but I interacted with them and they always treated me well.
Right on. So when did you start? How did the entrepreneurial bug bite you? I always love to hear about that because,
little bit of, I mean, I've always taught. I literally started teaching in EMS because we're required to do continuing education every couple of years. And a lot of the classes are the same classes anybody who is in the medical field knows about, having to take ACLS and PHTLS and CPR and all those things over and over and over every couple of years. So I got tired of sitting in the classes. So, when I found out you could become an instructor and you could teach a class and get the full credit, for those hours, I'm like, well, sign me up if I don't have to sit through all this misery every 2 years. So I ended up enjoying instructing and really took on and done it for a number of years. But I really just the last several years, I thought, I could do something. I always kind of struggled. I taught for other people and other agencies and did that. But I started seeing a lack. There's a lot of private medical training out there and a lot in the tactical side of things. And the TCCC, stop the bleed things, which there's some excellent companies out there provide excellent training. But I saw a need for some more advanced medical training for the regular homestead, people who want and are on this prepared mindset, who want to be more prepared medically. And then I start looking at the way the world is. You go to an emergency room every day and it's an 8, 9, 10, 12-hour wait to even get seen. And you're not even guaranteed that. And we saw with, the vid, healthcare shut down. And I've also worked over the years in many disaster areas, hurricanes and things like that. And I saw firsthand healthcare interrupted to areas where people didn't have immediate health care and what they did, and they have to may wait days. So what do you do when you do stop the bleed? What do you do when you do those things? What's next for tomorrow and the next day and the next day? And how do you manage that injury? Or what about when somebody just gets sick? Because guess what? That cut or, that wound you bandage, it's going to get infected. How do you manage that? How do you take care of it? So that's what I saw. And I didn't really see anybody else talking about it or addressing that issue. And the only other person I saw, and you just had him on your show not too long ago, who actually talks about is Jake.
I was going to, it must be, I don't know what you want to call it, but I was just, for those who don't, we always do a little chat beforehand and Chuck talked to me about what he wanted to talk about. And I'm like, man, this is going to be great. This follows right up with what Jake talked about because you guys are, you're in the same wavelength with that for sure.
Oh yeah, Jake's a good guy, excellent instructor. I met him at Self-Reliance. He was vending the first time that I saw him there, and I was presenting, and I was actually doing a tourniquet class, and I was telling people, if you don't have a tourniquet, turn around, walk through those doors, and go buy one for Jake. And he had a bunch, and I think I pretty much sold out most of his tourniquets and some of his gear at that particular one. I think that was last February's maybe.
But he wasn't at the most recent one.
No, he wasn't. But yeah, he just messaged me this past weekend, and he's helping me out, getting me some trainer SWAT T tourniquets and stuff. And then he was asking me about a show that's coming up in Virginia, and just I like keeping in touch with him. He's a good solid dude, good solid practitioner, and I really enjoyed listening to him on your live that you had him on.
Yeah, he was. I met him at prepper camp, and as soon as I met him, I'm like, I like this dude. We hit it off.
Yeah.
I could talk to him all day, So, do you consider you're into preparedness? Do you consider yourself a bit of a prepper?
I started. It's probably about 97. Working. Well, I was working EMS, and we got deployed to a different part of the state. For some flooding, heavy flooding, and there was some, real bad flooding and damage and stuff done. And of course, state government came in, FEMA came in, and I saw what an absolute clusterfuck it was with FEMA. Absolutely. And I thought, oh man, I'm part of this, and this is ridiculous. So I thought, I need to be more prepared for my family. So I started doing, like everybody else, 3 days, then a week, and then more, and then, I really got into it, the whole Y2K scare thing. And, I was actually working EMS that night, and that was one of the slowest holidays I've ever worked because I think everybody was scared to death over it. But I've just gone and I've gone and worked more and more hurricanes and disaster areas and stuff, and just seen firsthand the challenges, and you're just not going to get help. It's not going to be there, and you can't expect the government just to be there and come in and take care of all your needs. You're a grown adult. I don't understand why people don't have more than a couple days worth of food in their house, why they don't have a little extra fuel or redundant power sources or, heating sources and stuff. I mean, some of these people don't even have an extra blanket, for God's sake. So it just kind of stuck, and it's just really, I've taken it, and I was really into search and rescue in the local response. So that kind of got me into some of the bushcraft stuff, which ties over into some of the preparedness stuff, and just really got into it. And then June of 2020, I was in the hospital for about 4 months. I was critically ill. I was almost died. And while I was in the hospital, I was stuck because that was in the middle of COVID. And my family couldn't come down. I was in Texas. My family's in West Virginia, so I didn't have a whole lot to do. So I had my cell phone, and I kind of found John Willis and some of his videos and started exploring that. And from there, listened to him. And that kind of motivated me to get better and do things, and following him. And then I just discover this whole network that everybody's part of, Jack Spirko, and just that whole network under him. I mean, he's kind of like the Godfather, and everybody that's branched out, you and Nicole and Billy, and then people like Jason and just everybody in that group, everybody I've met through Self-Reliance and all these different groups. And it's just been pretty amazing. The last couple of years is all these different people to come together, and it's kind of nice. You're kind of like, oh, well, these are my people.
Yes.
I understand these people. They understand me.
I've said it, and I'm sure you've heard me say it before, but when Becky and I left Nicole's spring workshop last year, and we were walking down the hill, and she looked at me, she said, "We found our people, hon." And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I've known them for years as imaginary internet friends, but when we finally got together, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've just met so many people. I mean, Nate, from Two Chicks, and Evan with his radio stuff. All these, and Jason Rappaport, and who actually makes the T-shirts and everything for John. Just all these different people who have had influence on me. And that's why, like Self-Reliance, I don't go because I'm presenting. I go for the people. I just happen to be presenting. That takes 45 minutes out of me talking to everybody else. The hour that I'm doing those things, I just the network. Joel Riles too. That's another person. Really, just all these different people. It's just amazing. The amount of information that is out there that I didn't even know about until, I just happened to roll across special operations and John Willis,
That's
yelling at me through the computer screen.
That man, if you don't get motivated from listening to John, you're either contrary minded or dead, one or the other. So
yeah, and he's one of the nicest. Him and Amanda are just absolute, nicest people in the world.
He might seem intimidating, and he's a guy who knows what he wants, but my God, he'll do anything for you.
And he's so smart, and what he's done with that business and the homestead and the ideas he has, and Amanda, and I really love going down there, spending time with him. Cody, his son, just all of them, that whole group, and the out branch of everything. It's been very influential the last few years of my life, and it's taken me in a whole different direction. That's what's motivated me to do this, as far as the side business, and actually do, really get on this and do it. And then I'm going to be starting, I'm slowly going to do my YouTube channel and start putting videos out and doing those things and doing some lives. And because of that,
Awesome. I didn't know this part about you getting started because of John Willis. That's exciting. I love hearing that, man.
Yeah.
So Becky called me the other day. That's my wife, for anybody listening who doesn't know who she is. And she's like, you're going to take first aid, hon. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because I'm due again. And so, I work at the daycare with the kids as well. So
right.
They needed one more to fill the spot, and I'll take first aid anytime I can. But really, any of those off-the-shelf first aid courses that I've ever taken is just kind of, hey, deal with the person until the ambulance shows up, So, that covers the first 15 minutes. But if you're in a long, let's play, look into the future. But just say, the shit hits the fan, everything, whatever it happens to be. And it could be that you're just in a tornado's gone through or a hurricane and you're stuck for 2 weeks. But where does a person start to get anything beyond Red Cross,
I would look at reputable training companies, of course, Red Cross or American Heart First Aid or something like that is a good start. But I kind of equate that to an awareness level. It's just enough to make you aware, oh, something's wrong. I need to call for help. But, if help is not going to come or help is going to be delayed, and that's my whole focus on my training is it's not for when the zombies attack or, like we were talking just a minute ago, I don't want it to be just tactical. It's not tactical. I want it to be practical. I want practical care that you can apply to your everyday life. And I take an all hazards approach. It's not just the end of the world. It's just not when the zombies attack. It's hurricanes. It's tornadoes. It's disasters, because that's what is going to happen. A huge snowstorm that gets you snowed in that nobody can get to you and you can't get out. What are you going to do if there's an injury or an illness? How are you going to mitigate that? Do you have the supplies? What supplies do you need? And then what do you do with them? And it's not, and I'm sure I'll get flack for this, and you may too, but medicine's not rocket science, folks. It's not. Don't let anybody fool you. It's not. It is a little bit of critical thinking. It's some knowledge, and it's some application of skills. Yes, some of those skills are specialized. Yes, some of the skills but for the most part, what you can do at home, I taught people today how to, I demonstrated. I didn't certify them, but I demonstrated to them how to close wounds, and what to do, how to mitigate a wound, how to clean a wound, how to evaluate a wound, whether it should be closed or not closed. And if you're not going to close it, how do you take care of that wound for the next 30 days?
So you can go into as little or much detail there, but when you come on site and somebody wants to learn how or wants to have demonstrated for them wound closure, you have ways of doing that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Matter of fact, if you go back and look at one of Jason's videos, Jason took a skin stapler to the arm, one of the girls. Now, that wasn't my idea. That was Jason's idea, but he wanted to see how it felt. And we actually demonstrated a skin stapler. And that's one of the things that I teach because it's very easy. It's very easy. And it also, it applies to the homestead. You can use that on animals. You may have to close up animals. So it's not just that. So it shows that. And this is not, I'm not certifying anybody to do it. I'm demonstrating, and what somebody does in the privacy of their own home is absolutely their business.
Looking like a true anarchist.
By the way, there's a real man in a real hero. Well, besides Jason, he'll say he's a real man. But Ed, right there, if you want training and you're in Canada, that's the man to go to. Absolutely.
He's what a fellow Canuck. We're not too open about being Canadian, but no, he's good shit, man. I had him on the show a few months ago.
I learned every post from him. I learned something. He's an incredible resource, and if you're not subscribing to his social media platforms, you should be. You should immediately go and do that after Tim's.
Whatever. You can leave and come back. I'll still be here. So, and you can always follow me on the replay. So okay. Let's start with critical thinking, because that seems to be a bit of a lost art nowadays.
It is.
I mean, that's low hanging fruit. I can insult anybody, but it's true. So how do you, what does that mean by critical thinking when it comes to,
Well, first, the most important skill that you can develop, you can have all the cool guy medical stuff. You can have all the tools. You can learn how to suture. You can do, you can have an ultrasound machine, for God's sakes, or whatever. And actually, there was one of the guys at the class this past weekend who had an ultrasound machine. I thought that was actually pretty cool. But you can have all that stuff, but that means nothing. It's right here. And it's patient assessment. Every patient you see, everything you do, you're going to assess them. And how you assess them and what you see and how you do it is the most critical thing. And you start first by eyes wide open. And you narrow everything down. So you're looking at everything and you narrow it down So you're ruling everything out until you're stuck with just maybe what could be that one thing or that one cause for like belly pain. Okay. My stomach hurts. That could mean 1,000 different things. But you go through proper assessment tools of what you see, what you hear, what they tell you if they're able to, and then with some simple assessment tools like a stethoscope, a blood pressure cuff, all that. But I teach a big part of the assessment is before you use any of that. You're just talking, you're manually taking a pulse, you're looking, you're feeling, you're doing to assess that patient, because that is your most critical skill. And once you do that and it's interacting with the patient and what you see, it's the most important thing that you can do.
So when I had Jake on, it's really cool because what I find sometimes is guests tend to come in groups or pairs. And what I love about it is, I don't know, these topics keep coming up, which is good. So I when Jake started talking about the importance of assessment, and then do you know Donald? He's been down to SRF.
Yeah, I know Donald. Yeah, we presented together at one of the self-reliance.
Oh, right, yeah. So he reached out to me just after Jake's show, and he's like, I got some info coming for you. And he was saying how much he loved hearing Jake talk about assessment too. So can we do a bit of a dive into what a proper assessment is?
Yeah, it's first is you start assessing the patient maybe even before you see the patient. So if somebody says, hey, Uncle Harry fell down. All right, well, you're already doing the assessment as you're going to see before you lay eyes on Uncle Harry. Before you even get there, you know he fell, and you may already be asking the questions, well, how'd he fall? What happened? As you're going, so you're gathering that information, so you're already thinking mechanism of injury is a fall. Well, then you start thinking, how far did he fall? Was it ground level? Was he on a ladder? Was he more than 10 feet? You know, how did he fall? And then you want to find out, did you see him fall? How did he land? Did he land on his feet? Did he land on his back? Did he land on his head? Because then you start narrowing down even more what causes could be the injury. Is Uncle Harry awake? Was he knocked out? And then when you see Uncle Harry, as soon as you lay eyes on him, you're assessing. And the first thing you need to determine is, and when you get good at it, is sick or not sick. You know, and you could tell that within almost a few seconds by looking, because if somebody is sick, if you walk up on somebody and they're pale and they're sweating and they're kind of breathing hard, working hard to breathe, is that normal?
No.
That's sick, right?
Right.
Somebody who's not sick is not going to look. So that's when you start thinking, hey, we got to move a little quick. We got to move with purpose. We're going to have to do some things first. We may have to do an immediate intervention to save this person's life if it's something serious. So you're already getting in that mindset. Or if you walk up and if I walk up to somebody and say, hey, what's going on? And they go, well, I'm having a hard time breathing. That's not normal.
Right.
But if they say, well, you know, I've all day long, I've been thinking I can't really breathe and I'm having a hard time breathing and I can't really seem to catch my breath and everything that I do and everything. And I just walked 3 miles down here and I just sat down. I just really having me breathe. Is that person having a hard time breathing?
That might be more of a mental or some sort of anxiety type thing.
Yeah. So, you know, but if that person who can't speak more than 2 or 3 words without taking a breath, that's serious. We need to move. We know we need to intervene quickly, where that other person who can speak in full sentences, it's not a big deal. So it's those little observations before I touch a patient, before I do anything. And then as I'm talking to them, I'm looking at them. Look at their pupils. Are they focused on you? Move a little bit, because if they're watching you and they're intent on you, you know their mentation is good. Brain's working. If their pupils are reacting, you can lean into them a little bit, block the light out in their pupils, and then kind of move back. They don't even know you're doing it. Well, if their pupils restrict and then dilate back and they react with the light, brain's working. Watch them breathe. If they're not working hard to breathe, they're speaking in full sentences, you know, they're breathing okay. Look at their color. You know, look number one, around their lips. If their lips are full color, it's not blue or pale, you know, they seem to be oxygenating. Then look at their hands, because your fingers and your toes and your hands are the farthest point away from your heart. Well, blood is what delivers oxygen to your cells, to your body. So that's the transporting. So the farthest point away, if you've got good color in your hands, they're not pale, you're circulating.
Okay.
And it's other little things like if you can feel a radial pulse, a palpable pulse, that their systolic pressure, that top number, blood pressure, that top is at least 80. You know that with a palpable radial pulse, which is one of the farthest points away from the body. Simple things like pushing down on your fingernail bed. If the color returns in 2 seconds or less, they're circulating well. Or if they've got fingernail polish on, even males nowadays, you can on the end of their finger, just on the end of the finger. If that returns back within 2 seconds or less, they're circulating. They're doing good. So before you pick up any tools, you're seeing if there's anything emergent. And if there's not, and they don't appear to be in distress, now you've got a little time, and we can take a little bit more time before we have to maybe act or anything. Because the first thing you're going to look for, if you suspect injury, is there blood anywhere? Sure. I don't see blood. I don't see anything. But if they're unconscious and unresponsive and they can't talk to you, then you're feeling head to toe, and you're sweeping their body, and you're looking at your hands, see any blood, doing those things.
Yep.
And as you're going, and you're seeing if there's any breaks, contusions, bruising, any fluid. Look in the ears, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. Do you see anything? Any obstructions? Anything that looks abnormal? And you go through. And the thing is, when you're doing that unconscious and unresponsive, look at their body. You can't see through clothes. You don't have X-ray vision to see broken bones, but you can see bruising on the abdomen, on the legs, on the arms. You've got to look at those things because that tells a story.
That Hunter said that's why you don't use black gloves for medical.
Absolutely. That's what I was getting ready to say. And I told the class this past weekend, you can't see blood, especially at night. I use blue or purple. Blood shows up very well on that.
That's cool. I just never thought about it, but it makes sense because I always have those, what are they? The grease monkey gloves around, which are great, but I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah. For medical black gloves, people were going, the whole tactical medicine. Oh, I got to have my black gloves to stay stealthy and stuff. Well, that's great. You're going to miss that, the guy that you're there to help. You're going to miss a blood sweep. You're going to miss these bleeding somewhere because you can't see the blood on your hands at night.
So the crazy thing is we've just talked about basically a full assessment or, a pretty decent, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
that didn't require buying a single thing or having a single thing up to that point.
Jason's in here. He'll tell you, we spent a lot of time on assessment. And I know at first they were like, why aren't we doing the cool stuff? We're not doing the hands-on stuff. Why are we spending so much on assessment? But then they figured it out later on when we started doing hands-on and we started doing scenarios and stuff. Oh, assessment does mean something. Oh, now I get it. And I started seeing in the students the light bulb, pop, turning on and they were getting it. So I hope I brought good value to them. They seem to enjoy it. And that's what I try to do. I want it to be very practical for your everyday life and that you can see applying this to your homestead. What are the things? Because I've used more tourniquets on people, applying tourniquets on actual patients, not for bombs going off and gunshot wounds. I've done that, but it's more for chainsaw accidents, home accidents, things like that. That's what I'm using tourniquets for. And I've seen them used on and things like that is for that. And how many people use a chainsaw on the homestead?
And how many people, in a mythical grid down scenario, you're probably going to be malnourished. You're probably going to be tired. You're probably going to be doing activities you don't normally do and working longer days than you normally do. All of which leads to mental fatigue, right?
Well, and it's mental fatigue. And it's also, you're going to start thinking, oh, grocery stores aren't open. We're not able to go out and resupply. So I've got to live literally off what my stores are or what I have on the land or what I have on hoof. So you're gonna subconsciously think, well, I'm not going to eat as much. I'm not going to eat as much. When in all reality, you should be eating more. You're using more calories. You're working harder. You need more of that energy. That's where we get our energy. That glucose is converted by food, what we take in. You're not going to drink as much. You have to stay hydrated. You have to keep your body healthy to fight off disease. And if you are injured, your body has to be strong and healthy to fight injury and to work through it and to heal. If you're malnourished, you're behind the curve already. And if you get sick, that little cut on your finger that you make while you're repairing a fence or dealing with something on the homestead, that could turn infection. Then it becomes systemic. It gets in your bloodstream, and that's what's going to kill you because you didn't properly clean it and you weren't properly hydrated and you didn't have the proper stores, medications to do that with, or the know-how to simply clean that wound each day, how to change that dressing, how to clean it each day, and to keep healthy tissue in there so it doesn't become necrotic and you get a systemic infection from.
There's a lot there to unpack. Let's slide back just a little bit. So we've done the eyeball assessment and some talking assessment. And if what would be the things, like you'd mentioned a blood pressure cuff and a stethoscope or whatever, what would be the few little things that what pieces should you get and what skills should you have to do kind of a regular assessment of people?
A regular assessment, I would tell you to buy a stethoscope before you ever buy a blood pressure cuff first.
Okay.
Because you could do more with a stethoscope and assess more than you can with a blood pressure cuff. Because with a stethoscope, you can listen to lung sounds all around. You can listen to bowel sounds, your stomach. You can listen to carotids if it's a stroke victim or somebody who may have cardiovascular disease. You can actually listen to carotids to see if there's equal blood flow on each side. There's a lot you can do with a stethoscope and how you manipulate it and use it that you can use with a blood pressure cuff. You can do one thing, take a blood pressure. Now, you know if you've got a sustaining blood pressure, if they've got a radial pulse. All right. So you can overcome that temporarily. Now, if you grab their pulse and it's rapid or it's bounding, in other words, real strong, real easy to palpate, well, they may have high blood pressure. So that blood pressure cuff is important. So knowing those skills, how to actually take a blood pressure, how to actually use a stethoscope. We learned that this past weekend. A pulse oximeter is also very valuable. Now, I can tell by my eyes and through those assessments I told you about if somebody is oxygenating, if they're getting the proper circulation, because with that circulation delivers oxygen to the body. But it's also a good tool. But one of the most important tools that people always forget about, but I bet almost everybody has one, thermometer.
Sure. Do you have one you prefer? What's the most reliable, or does it matter?
A good one. If you get a $7 thermometer, you're getting a $7 piece of equipment. All right. So it's just like anything. But even if you've got one of the infrared, forehead scanners, make sure you actually get one that's for human use. But I will tell you this. The infrared temperature screens that you can use that I know you use for a wall or stuff like that, they're usually 1, maybe 2 degrees lower than what the human body actually is. So it's off. So if you could, in a pinch, take somebody's temperature with that, you can. But I'll tell you another tool to have. What if you have a sick loved one and they've got an infection, they've got a fever? How can you constantly monitor their temperature?
Well, I would have thought a thermometer, but I'm guessing I'm off base.
Thermometer doesn't constantly monitor, but you know what does? A meat thermometer. Tape it underneath their armpit.
Oh.
Take it. You can even get their remote one. You can see what their constant thermometer is, and it's within 1 to 2 degrees actual, that may be a little lower than what the human, maybe a little higher than what the human temperature is, but we use those in search and rescue. When we package patients up and we're having to carry them over rough terrain, we can't keep unwrapping them, to take a temperature and stuff. So we duct tape a meat thermometer underneath in their armpit, their axillary, which is also a way that you could take temperature, is axillary. And you can actually see when you go to the hospital, the fancy thermometers they use, you'll look on there and you'll see an arm raised, a little picture of the little display on the thermometer that they can select, which is axillary. Tape that under there. You've got constant temperature monitoring.
Well, that was worth the price of admission right there. That was awesome. So the thing is, I'm guessing that even if it is a degree or two off, it's always going to be that degree or two off, because in most cases, what you're looking for is a change for the better or for the worse, is it?
Correct. So, you can monitor those things. So this is common sense. Everybody, we've kind of been brainwashed over the years by the medical establishment that, oh, it's this big secret thing. Well, it's called practicing medicine for a reason. They're not experts. They don't know it all. A lot of times from doctors on down, and I don't know if most doctors will admit this, but I've had doctors admit it to me, and I'm sure you would too. If you had somewhere close, it's a wild ass guess. That's why they run all those tests. You may come in and go, and I'm sure this has happened to you. The doctor goes, well, I think it's this, but I want to run some tests to make sure.
Right.
They're not making, you know what they're doing, that making sure is? They're ruling everything else out that they didn't miss something.
Sure.
Which is still smart, and you want them to do that, but it's still kind of a guess. And they're going to run those tests because that rules out everything else, and you can focus on what it is to guide, and that's what your patient assessment is. Your assessment is going to guide your mode of treatment, how you want to treat them, and do I need to do it quickly? Do I've got a little bit of time? You know, do I need to immediately act? Just like if I walk up and I see you, Tim, and you have an arterial bleed, and you've got blood, bright red blood squirting out of an arterial area with every time your heart pumps, I know I've got to reach in my pocket, get a tourniquet, and apply it to you. You know, and that's the thing. So that is acting immediately. But then after I get that bleeding stopped, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to assess you. I'm going to assess you for shock. I'm going to treat you for shock because you're going to go into shock. But I'm also going to see, do you have any other injuries? I'm going to check you out, make sure there's not minor cuts or anything else going on that I need to address. But the most important thing was stopping that arterial bleed first. So that's an assessment. Oh, arterial bleed. You assess your patient. I got to take care of that right now. Then you go back and do the rest.
So okay, this is something I've always struggled with. I've taken a few first aid courses. Can you explain shock to me? It's a hard concept for me to get my mind around, and maybe that's foolish, but it just is.
Shock is the body's response, an immediate response to something going wrong. Nothing is going right. So hypovolemic shock, okay? Think of it this way, and this will be in terms that you will understand more than most. Hypovolemic shock, the tank is empty when it should be full. Okay? In other words, your pipes. Think of it as your body is pipes, plumbing. Oh. We got a leak.
Okay.
All right? Well, we got to patch the leak first, right?
Right.
We stop the leak, so we may put on some clamps first to temporarily stop the leak, like a pipe clamp, something like that, to stop a leak in a pipe, right? We'll take, and then, okay, well, now we got to do that. So we fix that. So now we've got to fill everything back up. We've got to repressurize the system.
Okay.
So when that system's down, you go to try. So if you have a leak and you try to turn on a faucet, you're only going to get a little bit of pressure, right? So think about it with shock, blood loss, hypovolemic, or volume loss. You've lost volume in the body. What do you think? Just like your water pressure, if you have a leak in your pipes, your blood pressure is going to do what? It's going to come down.
Right.
So if it comes down, what's the rest of your body do? So if the heart doesn't have the volume to normally pump, the most important thing the heart does is supply oxygen and blood to the brain. Because if the brain doesn't work, nothing else does.
Right. So it's like a pump running dry almost.
Correct. So there's different types of shock. There's cardiogenic shock, which is self-explanatory. Something's wrong specifically with the heart. Okay. Hypovolemic shock is volume. We no longer have the volume circulating through our body. Neurogenic shock it's neuro. It's your brain. We've had a spinal cord injury or a brain injury that is affecting the rest of the body because the spinal cord is the electronic delivery system from the brain. It's the wiring. So think of it as a power substation.
Yeah.
The brain's the substation. Your spinal cord and all your nerves that branch out from it, that's all your electrical lines going out, the electricity going out from the substation, feeding out to the rest. So you can think of it in those terms.
And that typically happens after some sort of
Injury or illness. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you treat that?
Different ways.
Okay.
Hypovolemic shock. So anytime you go into shock, your body is going to shunt resources away into the brain and the central core. And the central core is the organs that keep you sustainable. Your heart, your lungs, your liver, kidneys, those things, because they all have very specific functions. So what happens is when you start to go into shock, and it's the same thing when you think about it, when people are hyperventilating. Have you ever seen somebody hyperventilate and their hands actually start to curl in? They're breathing so hard and they say, oh, my fingers are numb or my feet are numb. People who get real excited. Well, what happens is they're not breathing fast enough. So the body has gone into a mild form of shock temporarily. So it's shunning resources away from the farthest point of the body, putting it back here. So that's where first your body gets cold. Well, in shock, it's shunning the blood away from the skin. Your skin is your largest organ in your body. All right. So when the blood starts going away, what happens? You get cold. Your skin's one of your skin's main jobs is temperature regulation. So you're going to get cold. So that's why we when you've heard people, an accident victim, we got to put a blanket on them, even though it's 1,000 degrees. I've seen people get hypothermic who have had volume loss in 90-degree weather, 100-degree weather. We're covering up because they're in shock. That blood is being shunted to the central core because they may have a major bleed. So the body is redirecting everything. The brain's going, uh-oh, we got a problem. I don't have my normal volume. So I'm going to put everything in reverse. I'm going to put everything into the brain and the organs so we can keep them alive. We'll shunt it away from the arms and the legs, the skin, all those things. We're going to put blood where it needs. I don't have my normal volume, so the volume I have, I'm putting it where it needs to be. So what we're going to do, that's why people get cold. So we got to keep them warm, and then we've got to replace volume. Now with cardiogenic shock, it could be medications. It may require surgery. Neurogenic shock, same thing. It depends on the type of shock. Septic shock, which is sepsis, when your body is infection in your blood. It's gone through your bloodstream, so then it affects your organs. And it starts to shut your organs down. So antibiotics, heavy dosages of antibiotics, and finding out where that contaminant or that source of bacteria is. Is it something inside the body? Is it a foreign object? Is it a specific disease? Is it a piece of flesh that has rotted from disease that is spreading bacteria? So you have to go on kind of an investigative hunt and assessment. Again, that surgeon is going to do an assessment to figure out what they need to do to fix it. It's ongoing. And you're always reassessing, because when I put that tourniquet on your arm, I'm going to reassess my treatment of you, that tourniquet, because you know what's going to happen? When it first happens, your adrenaline is going to go way up. Your muscles are automatically going to tense up, right? And it's going to be, it's going to be subconsciously, because that's what your brain does to protect. So your arm muscle will automatically just tense up. Your muscles will get real rigid. Well, once I put that on and you have that adrenaline dump and you start to calm down, what do you think those muscles are going to do?
They're going to relax, contract.
So what's that tourniquet going to do?
It's going to get slack.
We tighten. We make sure it stays tight. So we reassess. And we're ongoing assessment of reassessing our patient all the time. So assessment, as I said, your most important tool, because it drives your treatment all through your course of treatment of what you're going to do. Because then, just like having that thermometer on, taped underneath somebody's arm for a constant monitoring, if it's getting better, well, we can slack off on some of this treatment. They're getting better, or they're getting worse. Okay, we need to rethink, reevaluate, new direction here to try to make this better.
What I loved about that concept, the whole thing, is it brings math, or at least kind of math, or at least numbers into medical. Because for me, if I'm just looking, or, if I'm just trusting my brain to say, well, they look a little better than they did last time, or I'm going to be an optimist or whatever, right? I have nothing to go by. But this constant assessing and reassessing, that gives me the peace of mind I know to stay the course or change something.
And that's why I would suggest go to, whether it's a course from me, Jake, but find somebody who is teaching things like vital signs. There's nothing that says I can't teach you vital signs. There's nowhere in this world that says that. What I can't do is certify you to go out and act as a medical practitioner to do treatment that says that you're an EMT, a nurse, a doctor, or anything else, or you go open up, Toolman Tim's vital signs clinic and you charge for it. I can't do that. But what I can do is I can teach you how to do vital signs, but it's also a skill. If you don't practice that skill, you lose that skill. Ask anybody that's ever used all the students this past weekend. They didn't realize how hard it is that using a stethoscope is a skill. Taking a blood pressure is a skill. How to manipulate the stethoscope on the arm while you're taking the blood pressure to hear the pulse so you can hear that, so you can see what your blood pressure is. How you manipulate just the bell of the stethoscope on the arm to hear it properly. What a skill that is. But it's technique. It's not rocket science. This is not, I can teach anybody to do this. It's just showing you those fine skills, those fine little tricks of the trade, so to speak, on how to do that. Vital signs are easy. It's not rocket science stuff. Brain surgery, yeah. I couldn't do brain surgery, couldn't think about it. I can cut a skull open, that's about it. But I can't fix anything on it. But I can teach you how to do vital signs. I can show you how to properly do vital signs. And I can show you trending of vital signs, what it means. If the blood pressure is up, but you also have to think about, okay, you don't automatically get excited. You take somebody's blood pressure and it's up above what the normal range for an adult would be. Well, what are they doing? They're excited, right? They just ran, they did something, or they've had an injury they're all shook up about. Of course, their adrenaline's going to be up. So we take it and we reassess in 5 minutes as they start to calm down. And you may see as they calm down, their pulse is going to come down. Their blood pressure is going to come down. All right, now we've got something that we can trend by, something that is our baseline. Just like when you take your measurements, when you start building a deck or something, you're going to go for those square corners, right? And you're constantly going to check your measurements and your spacing between boards if you're laying decking down, things like that. It's the same thing. So we're trending these vital signs to see, is there a trend that's going to the wayside bad or to the good side? So we're constantly, whether it's every 5 minutes, 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, that also what dictates is the patient's condition. Sure. As they get better and they stay better and we see a trend of them sustaining being better, we won't take vital signs as much, as often. But if they stay bad, we may take them every 5 minutes.
Just to make sure that shit hasn't gone sideways all of a sudden.
Or it's still going sideways, that we haven't reversed the problem. But if we reverse it and then they start coasting back down the hill, going where they should be, then we're good. And we can kind of slack off because we're going to ease off on our treatment. We're not going to be as aggressive. And now we're going to go into maintaining treatment, sustaining treatment, managing the wound, the illness, or whatever it is, continuing the management of it.
So, okay. The other day I did a dump run and had a bunch of old lumber. And anyway, it's pretty much gone now, but you can see. So I reached in to grab a piece of lumber and I put a nasty little cut there. Never thought anything of it. And a couple of days later, it was kind of irritated and it was getting kind of red and pink around the edges. Infected? Sure. That's where it ended. It got better, but let's use that as an example. Let's say, I'm out, the shit has hit the fan, proverbial or literally whatever. And I've been out cutting wood or hauling lumber and I put a nice little gash on my arm. Maybe it needs stitches, maybe it doesn't. But, it gets infected and it gets kind of nasty. What do you do? Walk through what we would do in kind of a grid down, maybe the materials we need and really just the assessment and that kind of stuff.
Well, when that happens, number one, if you've had training on, and just this is exactly what we went over this past week, and that was one of the things I did for Jason's group was some wound care, and we went into that, and actually some of that I think he had part of that as some of the live broadcasts we did on YouTube, so you can go back and look at that. But what we talk about is, all right, you've stopped the bleeding. maybe it is a pretty good dead. It was bleeding pretty good. Maybe we elected for our initial treatment of that we packed the wound. We took gauze and packed it. We dressed it. We put a bandage on it. Okay. So we've got the bleeding stopped. Now we're going to evaluate this wound. Now we're going to look at, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean it. So we're going to look in that wound. We're going to assess the wound. Okay. We're looking inside. Do we see contaminants? Do we see debris? All right. We're going to take copious amount of saline or clean water. But here's the thing. And I'm going to give away a small part of my class, but this is nothing that's a secret. If you have treated water, in other words, tap water, lukewarm tap water, room temperature tap water, that is perfectly okay to flush that wound with. Because studies have shown, and they've done multiple studies now, it's no different than sterile water or saline. None. No different. So flush it. Copious amounts of water, and you want to take a syringe or something. I don't have a water bottle in here. Take a water bottle. Poke a little hole in the top. Squeeze it hard down in that. You've created pressure, almost like a pressure washer.
Sure.
Now, we don't want too much, but we want a good sizable or a good amount of pressure stream to flush all those even little contaminants out. And you want to do it from the top, and you want gravity to work. So have it going downhill. Flush that out so it doesn't stay in the cut. And then you want to kind of clean it up. Dab that excess water out, and then look. Now, that's where you're going to assess, should I close this? And you probably won't. You're probably going to wait 24 hours because you're going to make sure that flesh is going to continue to stay healthy.
Okay.
Is it going to be red and pink? Is it going to look like a good medium rare steak is what I like to say. All right. A good piece of meat. So you're going to now take clean gauze. You're going to pack it in that wound all the way. It'll be uncomfortable for them, but you could take like a sterile Q-tip or something like that, and you want to get it in real fine in that cut and pack it as tight as you can, and then take clean gauze, a covering, a 4x4 or whatever, put over it, and then clean gauze, and you want to wrap it. You want to wrap it tight, but not too tight. Now, when you pack that gauze, you want to do what's called a wet to dry dressing. So you want to soak, and soak is a bad word. You want that gauze that you're going to pack in to be moist.
Okay.
So you're going to pack it in, right? You pack that moist gauze in. So when you go to remove it, it's going to take debris out, but it's not going to take good, viable flesh, healing flesh. So the next day in 24 hours, when you evaluate that, you're going to look at it and you're going to go, okay, it's clean. I don't see any dirt. That skin is all nice and pink and everything. I think I can probably close this wound, but if I can't, or I don't have the skill or the tools, I can continue packing it the same way, clean, moist gauze, dry dressing over it. Okay. 24 hours later, I check it again. I clean it. Each time we go through all the same steps, and that's how you manage it. Now, if you start seeing infection, that's where antibiotics come into play, and you're going to have to dose on antibiotics. So, maybe your fish gets sick, and, maybe you've got some, your fish can help you out, or you call Jace Medical and you do an evaluation. Yeah. Or there's a couple more companies doing it. Their names escape me now, but you do that and you have those antibiotics on set, and you have a talk with your doctor, your nurse practitioner, or PA, and go, hey, I'm in a rural area. I can't get to this. Could I have some antibiotics? Can I have this? Or, they may write you a prescription, because that's no different than what Jace Medical's doing. It's absolutely no different. So talk to them and see to have that. And then you provide that instruction. In my class, in the advanced portion, we go into dosages of medications, type of antibiotics for certain things. Is it a cut, or is it a tropical illness, or is it something that's in your mouth, or is it an eye problem? Because there's specific antibiotic eye drops you can get. All these different things. Maybe it's a fungi on your fingernails or something that has turned systemic. There's certain antibiotics that fight that. Or is it something internal? Could you have gotten a foodborne illness? Because guess what's going to, a big thing, grid goes down, dysentery. You're going to see a huge spike in hepatitis A. Food storage. People aren't going to store food like they should because, panic sets in and people lose every bit of common sense they have.
Sure.
They don't think about it and they just do dumb shit. So, you're going to see a huge rise in that. So you have to plan for that. And what people don't realize is part of medical is prevention. So you need to prevent waterborne illness, foodborne illness, illness and disease from sanitation problems, cleanliness, hygiene is huge, because that's probably why that cut gets infected. Why yours didn't get infected is you washed your hands. You took a shower each day or a couple showers a day. You cleaned it. You took care of it. Your body naturally can fight off small amounts of bacteria because you're properly nourished, you're hydrated. What's going to happen in that grid down situation? You may not be properly nourished. You may not be properly hydrated. So do you think your body could fight off as well? No. That's why all those things are important. And your medical person is going to be responsible for all of that. Because you know what? They want to prevent them from having to do their job. If it makes sense.
It does, yeah. Because I love my prepper porn. I love reading my books about the end of the world, and almost always the head medic is, one of the biggest things they push is sanitation. Set up a proper latrine. Make sure food's cooked proper. Make sure water's.
Going home.
That's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, the medic there, he's always talking about, and all the books. He's always doing something like that, but you have to plan your medical out and your supplies, because if you take going home, for instance, they had gunshot wounds, they had illness they had to deal with, they had babies that were born, they had death they had to deal with, they had animals they had to deal with. There's a huge variety of everything that everybody's going to turn to the medic and go, "Hey doc, come here and fix this." That's what happens. That's the reality.
So with a long-term, a cut like that, when it starts, you said necrotic, is that right? Yep. So what do you do then?
Debride tissue.
As in cut it out? Yep. Okay.
You cut it out to healthy, viable flesh.
Okay.
And then you take care of that healthy, viable flesh by keeping it clean, by flushing it out, the contaminants, packing that wound, and then protecting that wound on top, putting a covering, a good, dry, clean, sterile dressing. That's what you have. So think about, if I have to take care of that cut for 30 days, and for the first week, I have to change that dressing twice a day. So I have to do that twice a day and then go to once a day. How much are you going to use in that month's time?
I don't know how much you'd want to talk about this. In some of the books, you hear about them boiling the dressings and reusing them. Is that obviously that's not ideal.
No. You do what you got to do, but that's not like tearing open a brand new roll of gauze that is, in a sterile, package, and that's the thing when people buy bulk, they get bulk. Well, you got to look at it. Make sure it says it's bulk, that it's sterile. Because if you get non-sterile, you know what you're going to get? A box of 100 dressings in there. And yeah, I talk about flushing with peroxide. You can do that prior to water. But after you flush with peroxide, you have to flush all that peroxide out with water. So you can do that. And that's something I do go over in class. I mean, I've taken a bottle of peroxide, literally just dumped it in a wound and let it bubble over and let it clean. And then take saline and copious amounts of saline to flush it out afterwards.
So is there much, because of course, as a kid, mom was always like, dump, it was either iodine or rubbing alcohol or peroxide, whatever they had, whatever stung, whatever hurt the worst, right? But if nothing else, flushing with clean, fresh, or proper water is ideal. Is that it? Or
yeah, you could take treated tap water is just as safe. Studies have been done, and don't take my word on it. Look it up. I mean, I'm just telling YouTube land. Don't take my word. Look it up. There are studies out there that have shown treated tap water, in other words, from municipal service, like they normally do for treated water, is just as safe as anything else. Now, will your well water, work? I don't know. I don't know how pure your well water is. It's best to have, but bottled water is safe. It's safe to drink. If it's safe to drink, so to speak,
Yep.
and it's been filtered and everything, you can use it. I've used bottled water in the field. I've never had a resulting infection that I am absolutely aware of, or I would think would be aware from using bottled water to flush a wound out. I've used it hundreds of times, literally, because in the last several years, I've worked in remote areas. I worked for 1.5 years in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. I was the chief medic down there for the recovery effort. And I had 30 medics, 40 medics underneath me. And we were doing flight operations spread out all around the island. And we were very limited resources to what we had. And there was many times we're flushing wounds out with bottled water, for the guys, the power, linemen who were reestablishing the power, the tree cutters who were cutting out all those things. Iridium Ed makes a great point about, towels often build up bacteria when hanging to dry. That's why, gauze bandages have the same opportunity after you boil them. So he's right. That's why when you think you have enough gauze, multiply that by 10, and then you might be close.
What's Bear's business?
Refuge Medical.
Yeah. Doesn't he sell a 5-gallon bucket of gauze or something like that?
It's a wound care bucket. And
okay.
I'm not knocking Bear's business whatsoever. They do a great job, great people. They put on a great program. If you're going to buy from somebody that's a American business who has American-made products, order from them. Order from Jake Drum, from Emergency Solution, order from them. But in all reality, a serious wound like you're talking about that you're going to take care of in 30 days. And from what I understand, which is in that wound care bucket, that might be enough supplies for that 30 days.
Fair enough.
And that's one wound.
Yeah, so, right.
And I'm not saying they're not ever, they've never said, oh, this will last you all these wounds. They've never said that. I'm just saying to give you an idea.
How much we use.
Yeah. One wound care bucket's probably not going to be enough long term.
Fair enough.
So buy 10 from Bear, order everything that Ed has from the Iridium Group. Any product that he has medical wise, order 10 of them, because that's what you're going to need if a grid goes down. What about using tropical antibiotic on gauze when packing? No.
Okay.
No.
How come?
Well, a couple of reasons. It can dry out, even though it's a petroleum based thing. So it can actually do some damage in that wound. You got to remember something. Topical. That's internal.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Different. Your skin is a natural barrier and protected. It absorbs things. So it also filters things, bad things from getting in. You go through the skin layers and you're in meaty flesh in the capillary bed. That can be absorbed into. That can cause necrotic tissue.
Huh. So we're talking about something like a triple ointment or a polysporin, something like that?
Correct. Not on the inside. You don't want to rub that gauze with it and everything. So you want sterile gauze.
Yep.
And then you're going to, after you're doing that wound care, it's going to be a wet to dry dressing. The initial to stop the bleed is dry. You don't want wet because moisture interferes with the platelet, the coagulatory effect. In other words, in your clotting effect. Those platelets and how they coagulate, that moisture will actually affect that and lessens their effect. So that's why you want dry, and you also want it as a barrier, and you want to pack it in as tight as possible against that point of bleed. So you want to look in. You want to examine that wound, and you may see it. And you know what? If it's big enough and tight enough, you may put your finger in there and tamponade that bleed where you see it as the artery and hold on to it. Get your gauze, wad you up a good little roll ball in the beginning so you have something pliable to put on, pack that right on that bleed, and then you start packing that gauze tight. as tight as you can, as much as you can get in there.
So if it's arterial, I don't want to go down too big of a rabbit hole, of course, but if it's arterial and you pack it, is that going to heal itself? I mean, is that possible? Or okay.
How damaged is the artery?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I'm just curious because I have
Not everything is going to be, would it be ideal to have a vascular surgeon, in your group and has a full surgical suite? Sure, it would.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I can't tell you if it's a nick or a small puncture. Yes.
Okay,
if
cool.
a third of the artery is destroyed, no, you're going to have to go in there and surgically repair it.
Right. But if you don't do anything, the patient's going to bleed out and die.
Exactly.
And
you can live without a leg. You can live without an arm.
Right. You can't live without
blood. You can't live without blood. Because loss of blood equals cellular death because there's no oxygen because of the volume. So cellular death leads to your brain dying, your organs dying, you dying.
Fair enough. What about the is it Israeli bandage or the stuff that you can pack in that has the blood clotting built in? Is that any good or is it just
quick clot? It is.
Quick clot.
It is. But I'm also going to tell you, studies have shown. Does it help and does it speed up the clotting factor? Yes. But wound packing gauze, which I don't have any right here.
Okay.
My stuff's still all packed up from Jason's. And my kit I normally carry on me every day is in there. My ankle kit is in the other room. Wound packing gauze is a tighter weave, a little bit thicker of a material than what regular rolled gauze is. Okay. So can you use regular rolled gauze as wound packing material? Yes, you can.
Right.
But wound packing gauze specifically for it, it's a tighter weave of gauze, a little thicker, so it helps clot that a little bit better. So it helps pack in that wound tighter. But you can use a regular roll of gauze and pull it up and pack it. Do I have quick clot and carry it in some kits? Yes, but every single one of my kits, every single one of my immediate bleeding control kits has regular wound packing gauze.
Okay.
So if you have $50 to spend on medical supplies, you can buy one package of quick clot, or you could spend $3 on a package of wound packing gauze, or buy 6 packages of wound packing gauze, some pressure dressings, and things like that, where you could put a kit together. But a pressure dressing is no more than a adhesive pad. In other words, about a 5x9 abdominal pad, a thick piece of gauze.
Yep.
And an ace bandage. They're just sewn together. If you take a 5x9 abdominal pad, is what it's called, gauze. You can look it up, ABD pad. You can order this Amazon, Bear, Ed. I'm sure Ed has them. And an ace wrap. That's the same thing. Guess what's also in all my kits? Those exact same things as a backup. I have pressure dressings, emergency pressure dressings, but I also have those too as an additional resource because you may need more than one pressure dressing. Wounds, especially if you want to talk about the tactical realm, gunshot wounds, normally if somebody's shooting at you, it's probably not going to be just one bullet.
Right.
You may have multiple holes. What are you going to do? I'll pick this hole. You've got to be prepared.
You might even have an entry and an exit wound even, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
So
there's certain pressure dressings out there. The Oleas bandage, which I like, that Tactical Medical Solutions has, it's OALES, is a great piece of equipment. It's a pressure dressing that has wound packing gauze packed in it, inside of it, along with that pad. It has a occlusive dressing, so to speak, a piece of plastic on it that you can use. And it has a cup that puts pressure down on the wound, but you can also remove that cup, and it's like an eye protected cup that you can wrap around. So if you have a head injury or an eye injury that you need, you can put that cup over the eye. So it's all these things in one. That's why I like it. I would rather spend. Can I get a Israeli bandage for say $5? Yes. The Olaus bandage, I would rather pay the $7 or $8 for that because it's all encompassed.
Did I spell that right? Or how did?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Perfect. Good. I put it in the comments there, guys, if anybody's interested. So, Ed says plain Curelix or compact gauze is also more versatile.
Yep.
Regular gauze can be used on eyes, external wounds, abdominal lacerations. Hemostatics are very specific.
Exactly. And it is very specific. And that's why I say I carry, like, I just use regular wound packing gauze, regular, compacted gauze because it's cheaper, number one, and I can have more of it.
Right.
Combat gauze, it's 4 yards. It's 4 yards worth, meters, but it's, I'm trying to get the Canadian. I got to speak. I'm translating for all you Canadians. But it's very specific what you can use. Could you wrap it around a wound? Yes. But like Ed says, you can't really use it in eyes. Right. You can use this for so many different things. And I would rather have what's going to be more versatile. If I want a piece of equipment that's very versatile, just like you with a tool. You want a tool. Yeah, you've got some tools that are very specific, do one specific job, but then you have some tools that can cover many different things. So, that's what's going to be more valuable to you, right?
Right.
Same thing for me. You don't want to have to carry an ER with you everywhere you go. You may only have your medical kit, like me, on my back. It's in a backpack. I'm 52 years old. That shit starts to get heavy after a while. I want I don't want to have to carry as much weight as possible. So I want something that does 4 things instead of just one thing.
Right. I love it. And inexpensive. So it goes further. You can buy more of it, right?
Well, and that's my whole thing is, I get the question every class I teach. I don't have anything in medical. Where do I start? Well, honestly, if you want to be prepared, the first thing you should start with, this is a true life-saving device, a tourniquet.
Okay.
This is a tourniquet. I carry one every day. I pulled it out of my pocket. No, it's not staged. You can ask classes, everything. I carry one literally every day. Literally, when I take stuff out of my pocket at night, my wallet, my tourniquet sets on top of my wallet. I won't walk out of the house with either one. I get a tourniquet. And then here's the other thing. Buy Band-Aids. Guess what you're going to use the most of?
My kids know.
Band-Aids. Yep. You think I can stock up on Band-Aids. I just want to give a shout out. Jason from Kentucky Sustainable Living has a shit ton of Band-Aids. Now, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to reveal all of his stores or anything, but I was very impressed with his whole array of stores, food, everything else. But he really took into that because what are you going to use most of? What do you use most of now, every day, medical-wise?
Right.
Why would that be any different if the grid goes down?
That makes sense.
So buy a lot of Band-Aids. When I work any event or anything that I do, every single one of my kits, I carry Band-Aids in the most accessible pocket on whatever bag I'm using. And all my bags are John makes them, Willis, special operations equipment. And I didn't have to. I had every bag anybody made before.
Right.
But I literally, out of my own pocket, John doesn't pay me. He's never, I've gotten a couple little things, but every medical thing I have from him, I've paid full price for, just like every other customer. It's worth it. Ed will tell you, he's used the gear, and this is not sitting in a closet or sitting in a truck. This is stuff I've used on real patients, taken to events, used out, things that I'm working as a paramedic, and it holds up. That's why I bought it. I'll never have to buy it again. Where other bags, I've literally been slung underneath a helicopter doing a short haul, 50 feet hanging on a hook underneath a helicopter with my bag rigged up too. And as we're 750 feet in the air, and I won't mention the name, but yeah, I will, because they owe me a new bag. 511. The 511 medical bag I had.
Yep.
Well, on the top, where John's is not, where it's supposed to be strength, double scuba webbing, all this stitching, it's slung into the grab handle. It rips away from the bag, and my medical bag goes down 750 and feet and explodes on
Oh,
the creek bed on there. Now, luckily, the only thing that was out of my pocket was my bag and my stethoscope, my $250 personal stethoscope, by the way. Thank you, 511. But I wasn't, but you lose that. John's, I'll rig it up there all day long. Porterhouse is here.
I love them. Yeah, I bought a wallet from John, and I got a crossbody. My wife calls it my man purse, but my crossbody bag that I use for everything, and they're bulletproof. Yeah,
This crossbody bag. Yeah, I know. I can reach just about anywhere and pull something of John's. Yeah, but that's the other thing. Don't skip on equipment. But if you can't afford something, put your money and budget it. And if anybody needs anything, I'll type in my email address. Contact me. You can contact me through social media, whatever. I'll be more than happy to give you advice on what equipment to buy. Ask me, is this good? Am I wasting my money? Is this a good stethoscope? Is this, because everybody gets on Amazon and you see 1,000 different things.
Right.
You're not sure what's good or what's bad. So I'll just tell you from my professional experience what I think is good. Now, what you do with your own money and what you want to do, hey, go for it. That, free world, do as you act. But I'll be more than happy if you solicit my advice. I'll be more than happy to give it to you. Is that an equipment? And I do pre-made medical kits, but I also custom make those. If you want a medical kit, tell me what you want. But here's the other thing with all of this, and I'm sure Ed will agree with me on this. He's listening. It's medical intelligence. I repack my kits for what I'm about to do.
Fair enough.
What's the weather? Who are the people I'm doing? What activities are they going to be doing? Where am I going to be at? What are my resources? All those things come into play. So if you tell me I want a comprehensive kit, well, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Okay. Sure. Who's it for? Is it just for you? Is it for your family? Do you have kids? How old are your kids? What are you going to be doing? Where are you going to have this kit? Why do you need this kit, or what do you envision it for, just in case of what? And I'm going to ask those, and then I'm going to start making suggestions of what. And then the very next question I'm going to ask, what kind of training do you have?
Right.
Because I made a point in this class, and you can ask Jason another one. I made them use a piece of equipment they've never used before, and I handed them the directions. I said, here, put it on the patient. And they were looking and doing and trying to figure out. And I did that for a reason. Because what's going to happen in real life?
That exact thing. You're going to have somebody who's untrained. I've done it not in medical, but in other instances where I've needed to use a tool. I don't know how to use it. And out came either YouTube or a manual. And you feel like a little kid going to preschool for the first time. But
is medical equipment, do you want to learn how to use something because you've never taken it out of the package? Just like I get infuriated when people buy a tourniquet. That's great. Take it out of the damn package.
Right.
Because guess what's going to happen? What are your hands most likely going to be when you're doing it? And I show people this, like my kits. All my stuff, everything in that you want to keep sealed and protected, it's in plastic. You're going to have gloves on. Where are your gloves going to be?
On the blood.
On something bloody.
Yeah.
So I take cloth tape and I make tear tabs. So it's something that's pliable that I can grab even if my gloved hands are slick. I have something to grab to tear that plastic quickly. So I'm not doing, and anything that doesn't need to be in plastic, like a tourniquet or anything, because my tourniquet stays staged, so I can do it that quick to put it on. I'm not tearing the plastic. I'm not trying to get the proper loop. I'm not trying to do those things. My equipment is ready to go. Just like anything else you do, if you carry a firearm, do you not load it at least?
Yeah.
I would hope you keep a round in the chamber so you're ready, because I bet if you go to tactical response, I bet they tell you not to carry an unloaded weapon with not a magazine in your handgun or not a magazine in your fighting rifle. I bet they tell you probably ought to be ready.
Damn straight they do. And they tell you you're wrong if you don't keep one in the chamber.
So why wouldn't you have your tourniquet ready? Why wouldn't it be staged? Why wouldn't it be out of the package? Why wouldn't you be familiar with that piece of equipment? I'm sure tactical response is going to tell you not to go buy a gun and make that your carry weapon and never fire it. It's the same thing. But people do it all the time. And what do? They buy a first aid kit. Oh, I got a first aid kit. I'm throwing it in the trunk, or I'm putting it in the closet. And they never look at it. They don't even know what half the stuff is in it.
That's right.
So get the training. It's like anything else. Take the training. Take the time, invest the money in the training, and then a good, competent instructor, in my opinion, will help you and guide you on what to buy and what to get and what's going to work for you and what your skill levels that you could properly handle and understand. And they should be able to teach you something that you could take back to your family and at least teach a little bit,
Yeah.
and bring them. Because my thing is, in my classes, if the class setting is appropriate, if you bring your child and they're old enough, they can take it for free.
That's awesome.
Because I believe kids should know this too. It's not rocket science. None of this is. I can train any age, just about, tourniquets, everything else, but you also have to remember, just like your kids, an adult tourniquet is not going to fit on a small child.
Right.
A cat tourniquet will only go down so far. And a soft T, which is what I carry, usually on a daily basis. I carry both a Cat Gen 7 or a soft T. It goes down a little smaller, but on some pediatric doesn't. I have stuff that is small enough because I have a grandson that's 26 weeks.
Right.
I'm going to be prepared for that, as everybody should.
So, tourniquet, you said if somebody comes to you, maybe we can we almost spent an hour and a half, so maybe we'll finish up with this. So if somebody comes to you and they say, I've got nothing. You started with tourniquets and Band-Aids. Where do you go from there?
Again, gauze, bandaging material, over-the-counter medicines. You've already got stuff. Make sure you have plenty of over-the-counter medicine. Make sure you have plenty of the pain medications over-the-counter. Make sure you have Benadryl. Benadryl is a life-saving over-the-counter medicine for an allergic reaction. Aspirin, baby aspirin for chest pain. And why baby aspirin? Have you ever tried to chew an adult aspirin? Most adults will spit them out like a 3-year-old. That's why even on an ambulance when I worked, guess what we carry? Baby aspirin. They can chew them up. They're flavored. 4 baby aspirins for somebody having cardiac-related chest pain is the dosage. We give them 4 baby aspirins. Here, hold your hand out. We dump 4 baby aspirins in them and they eat them. It's the truth.
I thought it was to do with the dosage. I had no idea it was for palatability. That's crazy.
Yeah. Have you ever tasted an adult aspirin, tried to chew it up? It's bitter and acidic and it's nasty. They spit it out like a 3-year-old. So it says, if they're going to spit something out like a baby, let's give them baby aspirin. That's just the way it is. It's to chew and it's easy. You don't need water. You don't need that stuff. They can chew them up. It's dissolvable. So that's why we give it. So get the baby aspirin, get the Benadryl, get the peroxide. Peroxide's cheap. Get all of those things. Get gauze. Gauze is cheap. 4x4s, 2x2s, Band-Aids, do all those things. Have bottled water set aside for your first aid supplies.
And that's a good start.
Thermometer.
Oh, there we go. Just that one come up from Hunter here. He said, gauze, TQ, tourniquet, thermometer, stethoscope, blood cuff, all of those good?
Yeah. Like I said, if you only have the money to buy one or the other of a stethoscope or a blood pressure cuff, buy the stethoscope first. You can do way more with it, much more than what you can do with a blood. In my opinion, if you can only have one or the other, the stethoscope is the first thing you get. Then you get the blood pressure cuff. You're on a budget. You have to do it measured, so do what you can.
My daughter just popped in. She said, "Hey, Dad, my live just ended. 5,000 likes, made $1 from diamonds."
Oh, way to go!
I'm proud of her. Right in the family. So
that's right. That's right.
That's awesome. Well, Chuck, how do people find you? Obviously right here, right now, but how can they email you? Where can they?
You can email me at chuck@APPALACHIANMedicalSolutions.com.
Okay. I'll copy and paste that from my email here while you're sharing your info.
You can contact me through that. That's the best way to contact me if you have questions about I will have my website back up. It's temporarily down. It kept crashing on me with my website, with my provider. So I'm going with a new provider and building a new store. I don't know if it's a problem with my store, but every time somebody tried to order something from my store, the whole website crashed. So there was, a bad thing. So, but if you need anything, I do custom medical kits. You can contact me. I'll contact you. We'll have a discussion on the phone, a consultation, so to speak, and we'll do that. Training, same thing. I offer 1, 2-day, and 4-day classes. The 4-day is the most advanced, and we can discuss prices and minimum number of people and things like that and what you get. But all my classes are custom. I customize to your group. I'll ask some questions, and then I ask, what do you want? What are you looking for? Because, if you just want the cool guy, tactical, stuff, I can give that. I can yell and scream at you, and we can have strobe lights and smoke and all that stuff and do that. But I want to make it practical. Do you have a homestead? What are you doing? I want to make this practical, that it's an all hazards, all encompass approach, not just you're being shot at. It's you're on the homestead. You're clearing weeds with a machete on the back end of your homestead, and you hit a root and it bounces off and cuts your leg. Are you prepared, and can you handle that? Or you're snowed in because you live up in the tundra, you and Ed, and you can't leave for 7 days. What happens if you break your ankle? How are you going to manage that? Are you prepared for that? You cut yourself. Can you manage that stuff? It's those types of things that I want to do, because I want to bring to you what you need and what is going to be the most practical, not tactical thing, in your life. See, I've coined a new thing we did before we started this.
You need to copyright that.
I know.
That's better than preparedness, man. That's awesome. Are you on any social platforms?
I've got an Instagram. I've got, I'm starting my YouTube channel. I just started TikTok. I've put a couple things up. It's under my name, good. Chuck Peoples. So I'm going to be posting all those things. I'm getting ready. I'm going to put up some videos and stuff that were from this past weekend to start getting the kind of the interest out there, show you what we do, what the classes look like, how, I'm going to yak at you, if you want to pay me to come teach your group, what it's going to really look like. I'm going to put some of that up. Jason filmed it. Some other people filmed it at the class. And, I enjoy doing it. I had a great time at Jason's. I mean, I loved it because it was a smaller class and they were so engaged and asked so many questions. And that's what I love. I want questions. I love doing that because it really enhances the teaching environment, because I promise somebody's going to ask a question everybody else was too timid to ask.
Yep.
So I was so happy with the group that was in. They were so engaged and so involved in the class. It made it a ball to teach. Well,
so anybody out there who's listening, when you were talking about the guy who throws his first aid kit in his truck and doesn't think about it. So I was right proud, because I'm like, we got a first aid kit upstairs. Everybody knows where it is. It's well stocked. But then I got thinking, you know what? The one in my truck, I don't know if I've ever opened it twice. So just so everybody knows, it was a good kick in my ass too.
And here's the thing: a lot of those first aid kits, it's 100-piece first aid kit, 99 Band-Aids, and 1 alcohol swab.
Right,
that's what it is.
Yeah, the weird size.
So it's look at it, make sure it's going to be something that has actual tools in it. If not, I'll put one together for you. Ed has some. Jake has some from Drum Emergency Solutions. Bear Independent, Refuge Medical, they have some. There's several other vendors and stuff that does stuff. If you don't get it from me, please use one of these local people. Use Ed in Canada. Ed should be the official, medical supplier for all of Canada. I mean, I think that's the way it should be.
Well, thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Those 90 minutes flew, my brother. That was good. Yeah. But if you want to hang in the background for just a second, I'll close up and I'll be right back with you.
No problem.
Well, guys, I don't know. I every week gets better. I don't even know how to explain it. Every night, every conversation, I love what I do, and I hope you guys love what I bring you every week. I just got to say that Chuck is a born teacher. I learned more tonight than I've learned in a lot of episodes, and it was practical stuff when he talked about shock and likened it to a plumbing system to a home. I learned something. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hey, I seen a nice crowd. We had 3 different people over on Twitch tonight. So thank you guys for all showing up. But anyway, make sure you support Chuck. Reach out to him if you're looking for training or some kind of custom first aid kit, anything like that at all. So with that, guys, I appreciate you as always. Stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.